everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to go over healthy relationships and then intimate partner view. So this will be finishing your dating and relationships assignment all the way from week 3. So this is where we're finishing it up, and you'll have the notes to go with that. So it's a decent chunk. I'm going to go over all of it. Notice you have a few days to finish this up. So you don't need to try to get this all at once. So the assignment is the one that starts with dating and relationships section 3. We did the theory of mate selection, SVR, must have can't stand, and love languages, and then online dating. And now we're at the healthy relationships and intimate abusive relationships. And those are two separate notes. So the first one is just looking at what are components of a healthy relationship. So it's going to be the note. So you go on your link, and it's going to be this one right here. And you hop on that, and then it pops up with these, and it gives some little scenarios that in person we do. You kind of just look at them and think about what you would do. We don't really have the discussion kind of piece, but just feel free to pop on those. And then we get to the actual notes part. So we're going to have the healthy relationships. This is characteristics of a healthy relationship. Just you have them right here. So each dash is one of the 5, and so then you'd put them in here. So those are the things that help you have a good relationship. Each partner feels complete on their own. A lot of times it's people think it's romantic to be oh, you complete me kind of thing, and that's actually not healthy. If you need someone to actually complete you, then it's not really having that sense of self and feeling good enough just on your own, which is kind of important to be a healthy partner. And both partners accepts the other for who they are is huge. A lot of times people think, well, they might change a little bit, or oh, they'll change if they love me. That doesn't work that way. So if you can't accept them for who they are, then you should not be with them. Both partners recognize and appreciate change because no one stays the same. Each partner establishes limits based on personal standards. This means boundaries. Having boundaries is so important. That things aren't acceptable, and if they do it, then either they get one warning or you're just done. It just depends on kind of personal boundaries and how many chances are you willing to try, if any. But sometimes you don't need to, right? So having those really set boundaries and expressing them well is very healthy. And then having a balance between the togetherness and the separateness. So wanting to be together all the time and completely enmeshed, we talked about healthy families, is the same thing. Completely enmeshed isn't as healthy. Totally separate all the time isn't healthy. It's finding somewhere in between that fits both of your personalities. Okay, and then this is where we get to the healthy relationship wheel, is this next part right here. And then it says healthy attribute, and then it's going to give each thing, and then we're going to put examples in there. And this is for you to think of. So first one, when we look at this, I just have, the first one is open communication. So then we'd hop on here, intimacy and open communication. So this could be an example. Feel free to use people that you know, or you can even use a TV show or whatever. A lot of times that stuff isn't as healthy, but you can get the idea. And so you're just going to go through and look at each piece. So open communication, how are we going to do that as an example? This could be using I statements and saying, I appreciate it when, or when you do this, I feel sad, or it's all kinds of different things. Open communication is also just communicating expectations. So it could be someone saying something as, if I were to get married, I would expect that we would spend this amount of time together. Making sure things align before you make those commitments. It also can be just calling and texting, how often is that appropriate for you? All of those pieces. Next one, talking about intimacy and safety. So the safety component is where you see an example, and this can be verbally and physically. So people say if your partner says kind things to you, that words of affirmation, that can kind of create that emotional safety with that person. An example, if they didn't, if you're giving me a not example of healthy, make sure you tell me the not healthy. But it should, for the most part, be healthy. So just kind of being around, if you might feel safe, if people listen to you, could be an example. They're not talking over you and listening. It gives that more like safety, emotionally piece. Okay, physical affection. So some people, an example could be holding their hand in public. It could be a healthy relationship. If it was just putting your arm around somebody, could be just like rubbing their arm. Lots of different things. Fairness and negotiation. That one is, how are you going to communicate when you are not actually agreeing? So, maybe you take turns. Like, if it's a smaller thing, like this person gets their way one way time and another one gets away another way. Sometimes it also has to do with like how important is it to the other person, and that can make a difference. It isn't always like, oh, let's just take turns. It's not that simple. Okay? But it can just be also like trying to put yourself in their shoes and doing that and really talking things out instead of just talking to try to get your way. Respect, that can show with like kindness and actually wanting their opinions, all kinds of things. Shared responsibility, so who's doing what? Like around the house, is it bills, chores, taking care of children, cooking, cleaning, all of those things. So who is doing what and how shared is that? So coming up with some examples of how that could be done fairly. And trust and support. So trust, like, kind of goes with honesty to me. So you can put different things for this, but are they faithful? Are they kind of an open book about things? Or do they hide their phones? Or do they have all kinds of passwords that they'd never share with you? Like, to me, that's a little different. However, you can't always expect that too. People do have a right to privacy too, so you have to go for your comfort zone on what you're willing to do. If you have a bad day at work, are they there to listen and support you? Would be a good example. Or are they just real quick and then move on? Honesty, responsibility. So, like, are they honest with you when you ask opinions? Do they tell you, or do they kind of sugarcoat everything? Are they responsible? Like, when they say they're going to do something, they do it. Could be an example of that. Okay, I'm giving you a few, but make sure you're filling them in. You can ask other people what they think for these. Like, more adults or parents can probably help you with it too. Okay, and then on here, I just have you choose to evaluate a relationship. This can be a past relationship, a present one. It can be a parent, a friend, a romantic partner. And then write what you think is healthy in that relationship and what is not healthy. Because sometimes we all have a tendency at some point to maybe not do things that are quite as healthy as we would like. So it's not saying the relationships are bad. It's just saying, oh, okay, this maybe isn't as healthy as it could be. And then number two is, how could you actually change that? What could you do to work to change it? Even if you're not the one doing the unhealthy stuff, is there anything you can do to maybe help that get better? Okay. And then, if appropriate, say why it might be best to end this relationship, if possible. I know if it's a parent or guardian, like, you don't really have that choice yet, but as you get to be adults, you do. Okay, so just reflecting on kind of those pieces, and it's also like looking at kind of what you can do, stop, and looking at all these different pieces, warning signs for relationships, some red flags in the relationship. I think this is super important to look at this. We'll look at that a little more also a little bit later. Talking about people sometimes think being jealous is flattering, but it's actually not. It's a sign of unhealthy relationships. Doesn't mean like, oh, if someone cheats, you're like, oh, no big deal. Like, there's still boundaries and upset, but it's not set over every little thing. Also, we'll talk about abusive relationships, but they can be super subtle. Isolate from friends and family. They might just like kind of over time just be like, oh, let's just do something the two of us and do that more often. So a lot of times you don't even realize that it's happening until it's kind of like there. So what should you do if you're unhealthy or abusive relationship? This talks about ending it in a healthy way. So make a decision, choose a time and place. Think about maybe in public, especially if you don't feel it's like safe. And it's just going to be uncomfortable. And then normally we have a little discussion. But instead, I'm going to have you move on, and you're going to read the following article. It's linked in your assignment. And this is 11 relationship red flags. So it's easy to talk about, like, what might not be good, but it's better to find examples. So these are like different things, and then kind of how you might see them. So inability to resolve conflicts, you have reoccurring arguments that are never resolved. Your partner refuses to discuss certain issues or acknowledge your concerns. So like the first part, inability to resolve certain conflicts is great, but the next part is like, what can that actually look like? And I think that's why this article is so helpful, to kind of see what those red flags are. Okay, so read through that and then put them in. What red flags have you seen in any of your relationships, past or present? Why do we tend to ignore that's in this thing? And then what can you do to be more aware of red flags in current or future relationships? And then just be thinking about, like, if I'm seeing a bunch of, or even just one of these that's really pretty severe, it might be time to be done with a relationship. And see, or a change in your behavior might be needed too. You never know. We're not all being super healthy. Okay, so I'll read through that. And then we're going to get to the abusive warning signs. So that's where we're going to the intimate partner abuse assignment or notes. So that's on here. And you just scroll through. I know this can be really hard for people to see and look at if they've experienced this in the past, but it's so do your best, but it's also so important because sometimes people are in abusive relationships and they don't even realize that it is. We have a tendency to make excuses for people a lot of times, especially if it's emotional. It can happen over time. So looking at first physical abuse, is most recognized, and actually it's like physical harm, or it can be coercing a partner into something. It doesn't have to just be like what we would think of as like hitting, slapping, punching, kicking, that kind of stuff. But obviously very difficult. And so this is, you're going to type in examples of what this includes below. You should have multiple in each box. So what does it include? And you're just going to fill in each box. So I mean, on here I would move this down so it's a little easier, right? So what are some examples from the notes that you can, that you can put there? Okay, maybe put the ones you're not as familiar with too. Okay, and then it's talking about emotional and mental abuse. Again, these can be separated, put in separate categories a lot. Like this is just some, but it's kind of a way to see control. But it's name calling, insulting, blaming, extreme jealousy, intimidation, shaming, humiliating, isolating, controlling, stalking, gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't making someone like doubt their own sanity, kind of. So basically, what are you saying? What am I saying? That the person doubts themselves based on what they say or do. So like purposely moving someone's keys and then they say they didn't. Okay. Sexual abuse. It's not fully about sex. Like it is, but it isn't. It's about informed consent and what people could do, but it's about power. Someone having power over another person. So making sure you're getting those in. And then looking at technological abuse. So this can be like control or stalking a partner using technology. It's more common actually among teenagers who use technology and social media. So it's just like hacking emails, tracking devices without permission. Like sometimes people just track because it's fun. Like my sister can track where I'm at and I don't care. But it's those kind of things, demanding to know partner's passwords. And this can be tricky. Like if you have someone that you suspect of infidelity and cheating, it can be something that you'd want to check to maybe verify if there's concerning behavior, but demanding it is a whole other thing, right? Financial abuse is basically inflicting harm or injury that prevents someone from attending work, harassing them in their workplace, controlling financial assets, or not like letting them be a part of it, damaging their partner's credit score, all kinds of things. There's also cultural identity abuse, so not letting someone observe dietary or dress customs of their faith, using racial slurs, threatening to out someone as LGBTQ+ before they're ready to, or that someone didn't know. And then isolating someone who doesn't speak the dominant language where they live. Abuse by immigration status. So this could be destroying immigration papers, restricting partner from learning English, threatening to hurt the partner's family in the home country, or threatening to have them deported. And then what to do. I have the biggest tip is if you think you may be in an abusive relationship, talk to a professional or trusted adult. And there's also a domestic violence hotline. There's a website link for you here, and there's also a phone number to call. What to do if someone asks for help if they're in one, or they tell you that they think they might be, or maybe you see red flags and like, I think you are. Do not insert yourself into a relationship. This can put you in danger. Some people think that they're going to just like save them, and then everybody ends up getting hurt. Call the hotline with the person if they're comfortable, or reach out to an adult to get them help. Super, super important. We don't expect you to know what to do, especially at your age. And I think that's part of what abusers count on. And I always think, to me, a big red flag at your age, if you have someone that's considerably older trying to date you as a teen, that's a red flag. Like, a lot of times people think like it's so flattering, and they say things like, you're so much more mature for your age, and blah, blah, they say all these nice things. If they're a lot older than you, they're a creeper, and they're creepy. Move on. So, just an FYI, like later when everybody's all like older adults, the age difference isn't the same. Like, that's not such a big deal. Okay, so that's that piece. I know it's on the upper of a topic, but it's super important. And then I want you to read this article on relationship abuse and answer the questions below. This gives great information on how to recognize the signs of mental and emotional abuse, because it can be so tricky. The people that do this can be really sneaky about it, and they don't start off doing it, or at least not badly, and then it just slowly over time they do it more and more, and then it's harder to recognize. And so it gives an overview, but then it also gives like humiliation, negating, criticizing, and then I want you to give examples of this. And read through, like, what things were you like, ooh, yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that, but man, that sure is. And just put those in after reading about it. Okay? And then control and shame. Again, take 2 of the bullets and put them in. We have accusing, blaming, and denial. Emotional neglect and isolation. And then codependence. Codependence is when everything you do is in reaction to your abuser's behavior. So it's like they need you just as much to boost their self-esteem. So it's like this unhealthy cycle of how do you even like function without them kind of thing. So there's definitely things in there. So kind of look at those and what are the things that you can see or do. And none of us are perfect. Like, you're going to see something in yourself in that. If you don't, I would be shocked. But a lot of people are in denial about their own kind of flaws and what they do. But put that in there. We all kind of do some of that stuff. And then how can you actually, what could you change? And then the biggest thing that you've seen others do to you or to someone else. Okay? And then 8, if someone asks you for help that is in an intimate abusive relationship, well, what would you advise them to do? And you can be looking back on here that we talked about, kind of towards the bottom. But you can also have some other ideas as well. Okay? And then that's your assignment, and then you can submit it finally. I know it's been a few weeks. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can email me, and then we will be moving on a little bit later. Bye-bye.